think that right there is so important for people to realize, because people always say, oh, I don't want to box myself in. And I'm like, you can 100% grow and change your content, but then just don't be obsessed. Let's see. All right, it says it's recording, so I think we can go. Hi guys, and thanks everyone who's joining me on Rise and Grind. Today we have Louw Barnardt, who started Outsourced CFO, and we're just going to be having a good chat today. You were recently also, I just want to check on LinkedIn here, named Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's quite something.
Hey Stacey, thanks for having me. Every now and then we get a little bit of good press that you take with all of the hustle, I guess.
Well, that's actually how I found you. So I literally just Googled, because I started this whole Rise and Grind thing, during lockdown, and it just started off with me interviewing one of the first people who got COVID in South Africa, and I was like, just to share some information, and I was like, I really enjoy this. So I literally just Googled 2020 entrepreneurs, and your name was on someone's list. I was like, I have to reach out to him. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great. No, thanks for having me, man. Excited about this.
So tell me a little bit about, what is your company exactly? I mean, Outsourced CFO. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you want to just give the beautiful people behind the screens just a bit of context about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Stacey. Yeah, so it will be 7 years this December since we started. It basically came about where me and two of my friends and fellow CAs were working in the audit industry in our articles, and we basically saw that a lot of mid-sized and smaller companies don't really have access to chartered accountant or finance professional level financial insights throughout the year. They generally, come to their auditor once a year, they get their set of financial statements, but throughout the year, they make all the same mistakes in terms of financial management and cash flow management, tax planning, and all of those kind of complicated things, just because the guys don't often have a background in finance or tax or structuring and the likes. The entrepreneurs are generally the visionary, the engineer, the designer, the creative of some sort, and they're giving expression to their vision through their company, but they don't necessarily have that kind of how do we create the systems and the processes and the financial infrastructure for a great company, and that process holds back the growth and job creation and potential impact of any venture. So we said to each other, look, we think there's a big gap in the market for something like an outsourced CFO function where entrepreneurs and founders can get kind of part-time access to high-level professionals who they wouldn't necessarily be able to afford or need even in the early days of their companies. But that they can really spring kind of soundboard those complex elements of finance with someone who has got the background, who's seen 50 or 100 different companies in 15 odd different industries, who can give them that financial insight in terms of how to focus on cash flow planning, how to think about pricing and sales, how to just engineer profitability and cash as they grow the company, which generally tends to be quite complex. So that's kind of how we started, and then we very much learned that you can't do advisory level work with entrepreneurs if they don't have good accounting in place. And that's where we kind of found this cloud accounting ecosystem emerging that's making accounting quite easy and streamlined. And we've jumped on that bandwagon with Xero about 5 years ago or so. And we've built out next to our CFO advisory department, we've built out a cloud accounting and integrations department as well. And that really helps guys with systems and with monthly accounting and tax. So that's kind of the holistic framework of it. But at its heart, what we really want to do as finance professionals and entrepreneurs ourselves, we just want to help other entrepreneurs be as successful as they can be and really kind of actualize their visions that they started with.
I love that. I also feel seriously called out right now because, I mean, the word entrepreneur, I think, used to be kind of cool, but not everyone's calling themselves an entrepreneur. So I kind of have to be careful because I don't want it to just sound like another buzzword. But I would consider myself an entrepreneur, and exactly like you said, pinpointed the personality of an entrepreneur is not very good with detail-oriented stuff. I'm more bigger picture, this is what needs to get done. Let's just execute it, and we'll figure out the details as we go. And gotcha. I know personally with my business as well, accounting finances, all I knew was like, okay, if it's making money, it's fine, right? I don't sort of like, I kind of work out roughly in my head. I'm like, we're not losing money. I still have enough money to like reinvest and like buy assets. And when I say assets, I mean like buy gear and things for the company. So, you know, and I can pay employees. So in my head, I'm like, oh, this is all working out well. And then eventually people are like, okay, well, now that the first year of the business is up, like you need to start thinking about tax and things. Cause you know, it's like, and that stuff I do not want to touch with a 50-foot pole. I like, it gives me the thrills. I don't want to talk about it. It's boring to me. No offense whatsoever. I mean, personal preferences, but no, I literally, it's one of those things that like, inside of me, I'm just like, I'm gonna like ignore it. It's fine. Everything's fine. And then eventually now I have someone on board to help me. But yeah, I mean, the person that's helping me, if I'm being dead honest, is someone who assists my dad with his companies. So if it wasn't for, you know, this guy, Paul, who's amazing, who assisted me, I don't know if I ever would have really gotten my ass into gear into getting this done. So I mean, I'm coming from a very like privileged perspective of I got someone to assist me. But I mean, for everyone else out there, I mean, this is exactly what we need. We need someone to be like, hey, it's not that scary. And also we're making it more affordable and more accessible for new entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, you're doing it the right way around. You first you must start the business, right? First you must create the brand and start getting clients and start getting some traction, and the finance and the tax and the compliance things can come second. But like you said, now there comes a stage where, you know, a year or 2 or 3 in, somewhere an entrepreneur needs to sit still and say like, look, okay, cool. How does this company actually scale up from here? I found my first clients. I know what I want to do. I've got a vision for this business, but, you know, how do I take it to the next level? How do I take, you know, 1 employee as myself to get to 10 employees who are running the company? If I'm 10 employees, how do I get that to 100 employees, etc.? Kind of how do you, you know, create that machine at the back end that can generate the, you know, the free cash flow and the growth that you're really looking for? And I think that's where kind of finance professionals can really add a lot of value in terms of just, you know, logically kind of coming in and helping to structure the creative passion of the entrepreneur to drive it in the right direction to make sure, you know, this thing becomes scalable and profitable over time.
I mean, exactly. It's just about scalability. And I think all entrepreneurs kind of love that idea of scaling. And I think they take for granted just how necessary it is, like how necessary these kind of chats are with someone who is like a CFO or, you know, a chartered accountant to help them with all of their stuff, because that is essentially at the core what is going to help them to scale. And
yeah, look, I think there's a reason why CAs and similar finance professionals spend 7 years in kind of entrenching themselves in the detail, right? You have to spend 4 years in full-time study and then another 3 years working in industry, and really kind of like an in-depth process of working with dozens of different companies in different industries. So by the time you finish kind of a 7-year odd process, you really have got a lot of knowledge, know-how, and lessons learned from other entrepreneurs that you can bring to the next founders. So I'd almost say a business owner is missing out on an opportunity to learn from someone else's experience, where, you know, if they have an experienced executive on their team, that's great. They have, I would almost say, 1 lifetime's worth of experience. But if you get an accountant who's worked in industry, has probably seen, you know, if I think of our mid-sized firm backgrounds, in 3-year articles, you see about 50 different companies in 15 different industries. So, and it's kind of 2 years of financials for each of those companies. So you've seen about 100 years worth of business being done, both very successfully on the one hand and very not successfully on the other hand, and everything in between. So there's really an interesting kind of amount of business experience, as well as then professional and technical expertise that you can bring to the table to just help the entrepreneurs get their ducks in a row.
And did you always like kind of see yourself as wanting to start a business, or like what was like little you growing up like? Did you ever see yourself doing this kind of stuff? Were you just happen to be good at it, or like you said, you just found a gap in the market? Like, what was your background and your training, and like did you just happen to be really good at math?
No, look, by the time I was 6, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think when we in primary school, in like the first grade, we had these entrepreneurship days at school. We had to, you know, create some kind of product and sell it there. And I loved that so much that we took our product into the streets, and we stopped cars. We had these surprise crackers was one of our first things, and we had beads at one stage and we had cookies at another stage, but all of them kind of like, you know, consumer facing products that we were able to create for quite cheap and you know, with mom's help, I guess, at the time, and then going to the streets. And I would remember, like, you know, me and my me and my sister and on one of the kids living in the neighborhood would literally stop the cars and pitch them, we want you to buy this 2 rand cracker. There could be a 20 rand in there. You could be a big winner. And if not, there's all like treats and surprises and stuff. So I knew like from very little, I love creating almost like, something from nothing and getting people excited about it and doing something that's kind of bigger than yourself, right? I think that's what really drew me to entrepreneurship, is that an entrepreneur that's successful can really draw, they can create something that's much bigger than what one person could ever do. If you think about, one person's ability to give back or contribute to society in their own name, even if they were to give all of their personal income, it would never be as much of an impact as a big business can maybe make in terms of, if you're thinking of pure financial terms in terms of contribution. So I really wanted to do that entrepreneurship journey, and I didn't know what it will look like. I never really got a clear vision for what it will look like. I just knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But my dad was a CA, and he ran the entrepreneurship and tax division at PwC, what is now PwC out in Kimberley, where we grew up. And him and my mom also had a real estate company on the side. And they were really passionate about business and entrepreneurship. So dinner time conversation would always be, kind of something around entrepreneurship or business or property or investment or something of the sort. And I think growing up in that environment, I loved it. Like reading Robert Kiyosaki's, like when I was in my early teens and stuff. I think those kind of things just directed the path. But I knew a chartered accountant background would probably be the best skill set one could have in terms of understanding business first. Then going into entrepreneurship.
The personality and, the skills to be able to be a CA. Do it.
yeah. So I was fairly good with numbers, and I loved business economics and those kind of things, and decided like a cool CA journey, 7 years, you get the designation for the credibility, and you get the experience from all of that and the expertise, I guess, and then figure out where to in business with all of that. And I guess, that's been kind of the journey. Midway through the last year of articles, we decided, look, we're starting this thing called Outsourced CFO. We found our gap in the market. We think we can't find anything like it, but we think it can work. Let's go try this when we finish articles. We're used to living on no salary at all, so why not just kind of continue on that route? We're used to an article salary.
I love that as well. And because so many people also think, and this is one of the biggest things I see, like other entrepreneurs making this mistake, that you need to have so much money to start a business.
Yeah, we had not so much at all. We were barely earning a livable wage as article clerks.
I have a friend who's also just now, I think she's, a couple months ago, I think she passed her final sort of thing, and now she's a CA, and I hear the scoop on like what it's like to work for other companies and things as a CA, and the trials and tribulations of it, and you really are kind of, it's very humbling, to say the least, from what it sounds like.
It's definitely an interesting field, I must say.
So then now you started your own company, and you were just saying as well, congratulations, by the way, on like your new bubba. That's also very exciting.
Thanks so much, Stacey. Appreciate it. Our little guy is 8 months old now. He's only supposed to be 5 months old. He was born 3 months early, so it's been quite a journey this year with the COVID situation and the neonatal ICU and stuff. But we're very grateful the little guy is healthy and strong and doing super well. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, as we were saying before in like the waiting room before we started the interview, I was also 2.5 months premature. So I'm just going to let you know, like up front, all like prem babies are pretty feisty. So he's going to be just fine.
Babies are the best. Now looking forward to it. We have already seen some of that feistiness.
Yeah. Well, like you said, he's not really getting enough sleep. I think it's like you burst out early from the womb and you're like, right. It's like, let's raise some hell.
We've had a range from 3:30 to 5 a.m. wake-ups in the last week or two. So definitely a go-getter.
Oh my gosh. And how are you managing that now, balancing your company and, your new bubba? Is it like, how's this journey been like? Is there any advice you have for people who like, let's say maybe even want to like have babies now or they've got their companies? I mean, what's that kind of like balance you're finding?
Yeah, so I guess, the best thing to do is to be able to heavily rely on a team, has been my experience. We're just about 30 professionals in Outsourced CFO now, and we've worked quite hard in the last couple of years to build a strong leadership team within the company who can take ownership and take responsibility for a lot of the kind of operational processes within the business. And there's a lot of layers to that in terms of the different phases of growth, and then the different kind of systems and elements you have to roll out as you scale to kind of get that leadership in place. But at the moment, I'm lucky to be able to really heavily rely on a strong team. We've got a head of culture and people that does a great job at getting the right people on board, even if I'm not looking. And we have a head of sales that can speak to the new clients as they come in and engage with them in terms of getting them on board, and a head of marketing who's running our content calendars and our social outreach and our outbound campaigns and everything. And then kind of similarly for every pillar of the business, there's a head of advisory, there's a head of accounting, there's a kind of a department head, if you will, for each element of the business. So that the idea must be that if Louw disappears tomorrow, the company can still kind of run. And look, if I look at my schedule and the amount of things I still do in a week, we're not quite there yet. I'm sure the guys can give it a good whack. But yeah, just still kind of working at that journey. But I think the answer to a work-life balance lies somewhere in that you can rely on the people and the processes that have been put in place, so that it is not so time demanding. Because the more the business grows, the more complex it gets. Like someone recently said, like there's a direct correlation between the amount of people in the company and the amount of complexity the company has to handle. So every new person in the business just makes it more and more complex. There's more people to take into consideration. So then you need good leadership and good systems and infrastructure, I think, are the key things there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what your company strives to assist with, right? It's like, it's funny because your own company is like, you've got to take your own medicine and be like, okay, let's basically put in place what we say.
Absolutely. Absolutely, we're lucky then to be able to, we learn from our clients what we can do better, and we learn by doing it ourselves how we can do better for our clients. So it is quite a privileged position to be in, I think.
And what is do you have like one client that stood out for you, one that just absolutely blossomed from like a one-man show to scaling beautifully?
I guess Microsoft was that for us. When we were about 18 months into business, still I think the team was 7 or so people or something. We were quite early on still, and there was this Microsoft ran this BizSparks program for entrepreneurs in South Africa. I think it's now called Microsoft for Startups or something. They're not so involved in SA at the moment, as far as I know. But there was kind of a 3-year program where they were going to incubate 1,000 tech startups between 1 and 3 years of age, and they needed for the top 10% of those companies, they got a portfolio manager, and that portfolio manager would do a needs analysis, and then based on the needs analysis, they would pull in one of 5 or 6 different experts to come help. And we got the contract as the national financial management service providers to this Microsoft program. And then we worked with about 100 of the top of those tech startups over a 3-year period. So that was quite a game changer. Microsoft paid us very kind corporate rates. They were more than we were asking in the market at that stage. Maybe more than we were worth at that stage. I don't know. I'll have to do that sum. But we would then get to work with, every month you work with, 15 or 20 different of these tech startups going through a phase. Like one's doing evaluation, one is putting in the accounting infrastructure, the other one is doing an exit. The other one is, the other one's going through a due diligence. The other one is struggling with cash flow, and they need to figure out pricing and cash flow balancing, and 100 other things. And our team really got to learn, a ton of lessons from those entrepreneurs and from working in that space. And I think that springboarded us into a place where we were some of the best guys for entrepreneurs, especially in the technology space in South Africa, very quickly. And some of those clients grew with us over the years, like. Maybe for confidentiality's sake, I won't name names, but some of the biggest tech companies on the continent at the moment were in that program. We had guys doing the first 10,000 Rand a month when we started, and they were doing something like 8 million Rand a month by the time they put a full-time team in. And we said, look, guys, this is now your baby. We can't help at that level anymore. So that was quite a journey. Like we got that at a pivotal point where we were like, okay, we've burned through the little bit of runway we had. This thing now has to either work, or we are going to have to go figure out something else. And then we got that, like literally. It's funny how these things happen. But a contact who I met at the airport in Joburg told me, now that I see you, actually we're busy with this Microsoft thing. I want you to meet the team. And a few months later we were on board. It was quite a miracle. But But yeah, that was definitely the one, if I can name anything.
Yeah, and how old were you when that happened?
Probably 26. Yeah, I think we're 26.
What did that feel like at 26 to be working with like all these people? And did you kind of, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was wild. It was wild and interesting. So I guess you have those thoughts of like, shucks, do we really actually know what we're doing in terms of, some of the people we're working with, so a 45-year-old founder who's built previous companies, who's now started a new tech company, and we're coming in as the trusted advisors from Microsoft side to advise. So, it's big shoes to kind of step into, but I think what we found early on there was you actually learn even more than you think in an articles process. You've got, like I mentioned earlier, actually you've seen 100 years worth of, financial transacting within all of those different industries. So you've actually got quite a lot that you can bring to the table, and that's generally more than the average founder would have, even if they're an experienced founder. They haven't spent 7 years digging into finance and tax and structuring and things. So we found that actually, we had more to offer than we thought. And the relationships we built in there also helped quite a bit.
And can I ask how much you guys would charge for like a new entrepreneur?
So we've got a couple of different packages. So it depends on if they're coming into the accounting side or into the CFO advisory side, or all kind of into both. So the accounting packages, I think pre-VAT registration is about, I think the entry-level light package is 4,000 Rand. Mm-hmm. Then it scales to 7.5 and to 12,000 for an intermediate and advanced package. So kind of depending on the life cycle. So kind of for early stage, mid stage, and kind of later mid stage, I guess those would be the packages. And the advisory side starts at 14. So it's 14, 24, and 40,000 Rand a month are the price points for those. So it's kind of like compares to, getting a chartered accountant on board full time to be the CFO or the head of advisory, which would be, would be double the average large package kind of price. So then you get a professional, for somewhere between a day a month and a day a week in terms of running the high level elements of the company's finance function.
Mm-hmm. And do they kind of sit with you like you're doing with me now and, chat and say what's going on, or is it kind of like they're running in the background?
So it depends on the type of entrepreneur to some extent, but from a process flow perspective, I think we want the accounting side to be quite seamless in terms of, the entrepreneur mustn't worry too much about making sure that all the transactions that he makes happen are accounted for and reported on very well. So that side, because it runs in the cloud and we put the right kind of systems and processing into place, that side is fairly seamless. So you would kind of have a monthly management reporting meeting where you would just get the results of all the work that has been done to kind of just to account for what has happened. But then if you work with the advisors as well, then we're going, okay, looking forward, how does, what can we say about the results that have happened? How do we look forward into the next quarter as well as into the next 5 years? And how do we project and plan and pivot and change the business up to make sure that we're chasing that kind of industry-leading profitability and growth? What are the key metrics to track, and what are the things to double down on? How can we, make cash come in faster and make it leave slower, and all of the likes? So that's a much more hands-on process in terms of actually entrepreneurs spending time with the professional to brainstorm, think through, strategize, and execute.
Sounds like such a dream, just to have like systems going in the background. I don't have to worry about what's going on, and just kind of like, all right, just make sure it's happening. I can see why this is so attractive to entrepreneurs.
No, thanks for that. I think there's enough things you need to worry about when you're an entrepreneur. Like the accounting side of it doesn't need to be one of them. You need to focus on actualizing a vision and leading a team and chasing your next biggest customer. So those things are what your energy must be focused on, not necessarily digging through the numbers because someone wants financial statements, or someone's asking for tax clearance to be a supplier to a corporate or whatever, and now you realize, okay, shucks, I'm actually 3 years behind on my accounting. I've got no idea. Am I making money? Am I losing money? I just kind of like look at the bank balance every month and hope everything's okay every quarter.
What are some of the things that you feel like as an entrepreneur you wish you could have told your younger self? Like some of the biggest lessons that you were like, if only.
Yeah, maybe first, so you remember how easy you think it would be? It's much, much, much harder than that. And even if you think it'll get easier as it grows, it doesn't. It just gets harder as the problems become bigger. Maybe I just need to tell that young 25-year-old man that so that his expectation is ready for what lies ahead.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take too much wind out of his sails, because I think that kind of naive optimism that you approach a new business with is valuable, right? It's kind of like, you're too confident to fail. You're just going for it, and you're not looking at all the risks and all the crazy things and how hectic it will be. You just kind of power through. But I think relationships is definitely an absolutely key thing. So I think as an entrepreneur, one of your key roles is to attract the right relationships to the company. So that would be relationships in terms of clients, in terms of partners, in terms of co-founders, in terms of staff. All of those things are really important to investors potentially as well if you're looking to raise capital. So figuring out a way to really work on your current network as well as the relationships you have already, and building those out over time and making sure you engage with those people all along, I think is a critical lesson, I'd say.
So you've kind of got to be a little bit of an extrovert then. You kind of got to be comfortable with constantly meeting new people, being in contact, networking. And not everyone can be an extrovert, I guess, but finding the right way in which you can connect with those people. It can also be in the form of, LinkedIn engagement and newsletters going out. You don't necessarily need to be in front of people all the time having conversations. But I think in the beginning, the most valuable thing is just get out of your comfort zone, whether you're introvert or extrovert. Meeting new people who can potentially help you either get new business or or build the business is critical. You spend many hours, many nights at networking things, just meeting people. That network net worth kind of quote that's out there. There is some truth to it. And do you find, because to be honest, someone like myself, I can't stand these networking events. I find them, maybe I'm just going to the wrong ones, but I find them to be very, you already know what I'm going to say about them.
Go for it.
It's just very much, you feel like everyone's just kind of there, trying to push themselves on each other. And I mean, are there any networks that you found for entrepreneurs, especially younger entrepreneurs, or maybe not even younger, because I mean, everyone's kind of starting new companies, especially if you're an entrepreneur. I don't know about you, but I find myself being cool, this baby's kind of self-sufficient now. Let's maybe see what else is going on over here. So I think no matter what age, you're always kind of dipping your toes in different things and trying out new things. So is there a network or a Facebook page or a gathering where you find is actually fruitful for entrepreneurs to go to?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few. I think it doesn't matter as much to which ones you go as it does that you are part of some kind of a community where you have other entrepreneurs going through the journey to kind of just have a conversation with, because it can be quite a lonely journey in some ways in terms of you can't necessarily share your biggest wins or your biggest fears and failures with anyone in your life. Not every friend is going to understand that. Not every spouse is going to understand that. Not every family member wants to hear it. So it helps to have other entrepreneurs who are in the trenches as well. So if I were to name a few for us, when we started in Bandwidth Barn out in Woodstock in Cape Town. At the time, it was quite a vibrant community in the Woodstock Exchange. It was nice and hipster over there, lots of tech startups were founded there. There was, I think, 88 miles per hour was on the one block. There was Tech Accelerator, and then Bandwidth Barn had their entrepreneurship accelerator in an incubator in the other block within the Woodstock Exchange. That was quite a vibrant place to start for us, and we built a lot of our first clients and our first connections came from that space. Then other interesting ones, I think Investec has a program called Startup School. Investec is one of our biggest clients at the moment, and they have a lot of different entrepreneurship initiatives that are really cool. And Startup School for early stage companies, I think, is a really cool community to be a part of. It's like a 12-week online course done by some of the ex-Get Smarter guys.
Yeah.
A really cool program, and then
it's like one of the coaches.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, me too. Yeah, we've referred a few entrepreneurs to that. I think it's nice that you get the learnings, but you also get the community. You're part of a couple of hundred entrepreneurs who are all in that early stage figuring out the company and building it out. So that's quite cool. When you're a little bit later stage entrepreneur organization, I would say that has been the pivotal point for us, I think. Like joining the EO community has been unbelievable. So it's an organization for $1 million turnover plus companies around the world, and I think there's about 14 or so thousand of them in every city around the world. And the network and the learning process and the experiences and just the people you get to spend time with in their structure is absolutely amazing. And I think that there's an accelerator program that starts at, I think, $250,000. So about 4 million Rand turnover companies can apply for the accelerator. And that structure and that accelerator is unbelievable. It forces you to learn the kind of key principles that they've developed over 30 years in terms of how to think about strategy, people, execution, and cash. So everything within that. So they've got these 4 major pillars on which the company stands, and then they've got templates, tools, and methodologies and mindsets around each one of those. And if you start on the one side and you work that through during the course of a year with other entrepreneurs, and you do it again and you do it again, eventually you start scaling it. It almost, if you're doing the work, you almost can't not grow.
Yeah.
So that's been a very valuable ecosystem for any youngish entrepreneur who hits 4 million turnover. I would say freaking join EO Accelerator. That's the best thing you can do. I can probably think of a few more, but those are the top of mind ones.
Well, I mean, look, if there's anything else that comes to mind, like just feel free to email it through, because I'm going to be dead honest with you right now. Like I feel so starved for like that kind of interaction at the moment, like with other entrepreneurs as well. It's just like, I mean, that's why I love these kinds of interactions as well. But I mean, it doesn't beat like being in a community with people and just like chatting and sharing ideas, and you feel like they're kind of your people.
Absolutely. I have to mention Startup Grind as well, I guess, because Startup Grind is probably one of the reasons why we are here today. At the very first Startup Grind event in Cape Town, we were at that very event when we were thinking of like, what the hell can we do? We don't want to take a job in corporate after we finish articles. And, there were 70 entrepreneurs coming to listen to a panel style interview with one successful entrepreneur. I can't even remember who spoke on the night. All I can remember is that there were 70 entrepreneurs in the room. All of them had their own companies, and there were no finance professionals in the room. And then that's why we said, okay, cool. Someone has to be the finance professional for all of these entrepreneurs and startups and things. Let's start there and kind of figure it out from there. So I'd say, go and attend a few startup grinds. There's always a couple of interesting peeps you can meet, and the stories are generally quite inspiring too.
I love that. And then just one last little question. What do you think is like some of the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making?
So we see a lot of mistakes because we generally start a client journey with a gap analysis of the company to really delve into, where are all the kind of weak spots in the business, where are all the biggest risks and the gaps that we need to start addressing, generally from a financial and compliance side, but also from a business perspective. So if I can, maybe let me first speak to the finance side. Dropping the ball on compliance. We've seen so many guys fold a few years in because they haven't done proper compliance. If you haven't done your VAT registration at the right time when you hit $1 million turnover, we've seen guys, at 10 million turnover, 6 years in, and they've never registered for VAT, which means SARS is eligible to get 15% of all the turnover you've ever invoiced to clients. That breaks any business. It's millions in tax liability. So that kind of thing, missing payroll tax deadlines, missing companies' tax deadlines like SARS, you do not want to mess with. So kind of like making sure your compliance side from a taxation perspective, firstly, and also from just a company's act perspective is rock solid. We see many guys not doing that well, and it's not the most important thing for the business to be successful. The most important thing is to have paying clients that are growing. But if you don't get this right, your paying clients can also quickly go away. So that's definitely a big one. Burnout, I must say burnout is something we've seen entrepreneurs kind of early stage, mid stage, later stage, hit burnout at some stage. The journey has an incredible ask to it, like personally, emotionally, professionally, like it's a very big ask journey to build a successful company. So figure out for yourself, like what are the structures you can put in, kind of build into your life to help you cope with that. to say, look, I do not work more than 45 hours in a week. I cap it always in every circumstance, and never work past 6 p.m. Under any circumstance. Like, try not to work more than one weekend in a calendar month. Like, just kind of try and cap it. Like, weekends are important, family time is important, evenings are important. You need a lot of rest. There will always be more things to come. Morning routine has also been a huge one for me personally. Just have a structure when you start your day. Like, what do you do first thing in the morning when your eyes open, to make sure that you have the focus and dedication and energy for the day that lies ahead. So kind of managing yourself throughout that process to not just burn out by working harder and becoming less and less balanced, and having the right people in your life can keep you accountable to that, I think is also big. So yeah, just try to steer clear of burnout. And maybe last thing on that, kind of on the like clockwork, around 7 to 10 years into business, we see guys going off the course. Companies who are 10, 20, 30 million rand turnover companies, very successfully scaled over 7 or 8 or 9 years. One or both or more than one of the founders lose their interest, lose their passion, lose their focus, and the company starts going down and crashes, and they fight, and the whole thing comes to nothing. We've seen that many, many times. So I would say if you're kind of getting close to the 7-year mark, you need to take some time off. Like what we're trying to do with our guys is, we said each one of our 3 founders are going to take 3 months off next year to make sure that we have a break from the business, to just refresh, recover, refocus. Because continuously just kind of grinding every year you try to scale bigger, try to be better. It's taxing. So, rather than doing that until you go off the rails, which everyone eventually does, find those breaks and those points to press pause. It's almost more important to be able to know when to stop than it is to know how to keep going.
I think that's an excellent point, really. I mean, especially in today's culture of just consistently grinding, and it's a bit of a combination of both. I would think it's like this toxic positivity, which prevents people from actually saying when they're actually burnt out. It's like everything's great all the time and I'm fine, and it's just like it's not realistic, and then it stops people from. That's why I love these chats, because I feel like there's so many entrepreneurs on social media who are just completely putting out the wrong message, and it's not realistic. It's not a realistic depiction of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. So I think anyone who watches this is going to be so grateful for everything you've said, and you've been really honest and candid, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Oh, cool. No, thanks for having me, Stacey. Great to share some of the journey from this side, and wishing you all the best with your business as well.
Thank you, and good luck with the baby. I hope eventually he'll give you some rest, and all the best.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. Hoping for that.
Bye.